You cannot take somebody's pain from them. You can just clone it, but you don't have the right or the ability to pull it out of them. It's not like snake venom you can suck out of a wound. It's their pain, and it's being stabilized in them.
Welcome to the Bucket List Life Podcast with Trav Bell, the world's #1 bucket list expert. Bucket List Life's mission is to help you get off the treadmill, stop Groundhog Days, hack your habits, and live a regret-free life. Because we know life's way too short not to live your bucket list life. So please welcome your host, Trav Bell, the Bucket List Guy.
Hey bucket listers, welcome to another episode of the Bucket List Life podcast. And this is going to be an awesome episode, guys. It's all about living your bucket list life. But in order to do that, there is always blockages. There's always obstacles. And I think, one of the best people to get you through those obstacles, challenges, struggles, to get you onto the next level. Right here, right now, Michelle Masters, super coach. How are you, Michelle?
I'm good, Travis. Thank you. It's so nice to be here again.
Oh, my God. We haven't connected for, what?
I don't know, 15
7
years?
Oh, my God. Yeah, it's been a while. And you coached me at one stage there and had me laughing and crying all in the same minute. So thank you for that.
Full spectrum, yeah.
breakdown before breakthrough, always a work in progress.
There you go.
Whereabouts in the world are you right now?
I'm in Northern California in the wine country. So lots of vineyards and orchards.
Very cool. Very cool. Now, when, bucket list theme, let's go with that. When you come to Australia, which you do regularly, and you fly around the world to different conferences, both as a speaker and a coach and doing your workshops and stuff, we have these incoming passenger cards. And on those incoming passenger cards, we have occupation.
Yeah.
What do you put on yours?
That's a good question. I don't remember. Usually I put teacher. But yeah, I think that's what I usually put because in essence, that's what it is. But it often shows up like coaching or.
I know for one thing, you just don't joke about that because then Homeland Security takes it too far, and before you know it, it's just good to put, small business owner or something like that. Just entrepreneur, that'll do.
Oh, okay. I never thought of that. That would work.
Yeah. I want to dive right into it. We know each other through mutual coaches. And how did you arrive to be, the coach that you are? And we'll give it some, the enormity of your coaching and, your background in it. And but how did you stumble on coaching? Like, how did you get into it? What's your background on that?
Yeah, well, my background is in theater, so nothing that would necessarily lend itself to coaching, although really useful for teaching. My first job out of college was teaching environmental education because this school discovered it was easier to teach theater people science than to teach science people how to be interesting. So there's a lot of that I find really useful about, how to communicate an idea and make it go down easy and ideally make it enjoyable and fun for people, at least engaging. So, yeah.
And when did you stumble onto neuro-linguistic programming and, coaching?
Right. Well, I had briefly considered being like a counselor or a therapist at some point. And then I realized just sitting and listening to how bad things were for people and not being able to really do anything was just, it's like, oh, no, that's never going to work. So I spent a lot of years kind of wandering in the wilderness, both metaphorically and literally. And then one day somebody said to me, there was this free seminar and they said, you should go. And it was for NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And I almost walked out of this. There was only two of us there in this enormous room. Like it holds 300 people. There's two of us that show up for this talk. Uh-oh. And there's two guys waiting, desperately hoping somebody else will show up. And so I looked at the brochure and I saw the price and I thought, oh, I should leave now. I don't want to get their hopes up because no way I can afford it. And the other lady said, please don't go. Don't leave. So I'm like, okay. She didn't want to be the only person there. But within half an hour, I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. Because just even a little simple, like parlor tricks they were doing to show you how your mind creates reality and how it shapes your reality, I could feel things shift and change in my body. And I did 4 years of therapy with a saintly woman, bless her. And I got so much from her, but nothing ever changed. And
Ah.
in this little simple thing, I could feel things change. And I thought, if they can do this in 15 minutes, what can these really do?
Talk to me about I guess the counseling and therapy. Well, let's specifically talk about counseling. So you're saying you sort of felt hamstrung, counseling. It doesn't give you everything. You can't really help someone, in the way that you wanted to help. What do you mean by that?
Well, counseling is really good and therapy is really good for helping people to get an emotional vocabulary, start to become aware of their emotions, and for somebody to start to reflect back, maybe that wasn't the way you grew up, because we all assume the way we grow up is how it's supposed to be. Like maybe that wasn't ideal. So it's really good for those kind of realizations. But what it doesn't do is change the patterning.
Mm.
So, and here's the thing. What I still see this with most coaches is even coaches, they try to change what is essentially unconscious behavior, unconscious beliefs, unconscious patterning. They try to change it through conscious interaction. They try to change it through someone's conscious mind. Now, that's like if you have a 30-story building and you've got in your basement, you've got cracks in the foundation, and you send a team of motivational speakers to the penthouse and expect that to fix the cracks in the foundation. Great, but somebody's got to go into the basement and rewire some stuff or fill in some cracks. And that's why when you do that, then this stuff stays changed. But it's literally a different part of the brain. It is not the conscious mind.
Wow. So, okay, so sending motivational speakers in there to
To the penthouse.
yeah, that's the best. And the great thing about from coach to coach, I can see a metaphor coming from a mile away too. So like we storytelling and metaphors are all part of coaching, and you're one of the reasons why I got into coaching. What I did with you, both being a client and then also learning NLP from you and Carl, was life-changing. Perfect place, perfect time, and still work in progress.
Yeah, me too. Me too. 30
Who
years.
isn't? But when you've got that heart for helping,
Yeah.
you can't help it. And we're bringing on more and more tools. Every workshop, every seminar, every walk on fire that we do, every person that we interact with, we're all, building up our toolbox, aren't we, as coaches? Yeah. And it never stops. I guess the more interactions with clients and me, more so from one to many via the audiences that I speak in front of, it's not about one size fits all. This spanner does everything, the jack of all trades kind of tool. You're just building up these tool chest or toolbox to bring out these different tools, which is what you are an absolute master of, bringing out those tools for every, I think, and we'll circle back to this. One of the trippiest things, I think I've already said this to you one of the trippiest fucking things that I've ever seen off drugs, and you know where I'm going with this, is family systems.
Family
when we did that.
Yeah.
Family constellations, sorry.
Well, family systems works.
Oh my God. That was just incredible. I've written that down for later, so we'll circle back. But what is NLP? Let's just, for those that don't know what NLP is, you've probably seen it, heard it. People have done little, maybe NLP courses and that sort of thing. But, what is NLP? Where did it start?
Yeah, it started in Santa Cruz in the 70s, like basically a graduate student. A couple of graduate students got, some faculty to sign off on this project where they were studying people who were exceptional at what they did, like famous therapists, Milton Erickson, Fritz Perls, Virginia Satir, people who were just exceptional, who had the same training as other people, but were doing something differently that even they weren't aware that they were doing. And so what these guys did is they kept like boiling it down and boiling it down and boiling it down until they could reproduce the results of these folks. So they didn't necessarily create anything, but they stole from the very best, and they figured out what it was those people were doing that was different. And they were interested in what makes, communication better, what allows people to change, like to really change, like phobia fixes. When they started doing phobia fixes, traditional psychological theory was that could not happen. Like the first time they demoed it, more than half the room got up and left because they said that's not possible. All these psychologists and psychiatrists left.
Is it true that that's actually how? And was it Bandler and
Richard Bandler, John Grinder are the most famous, but there was a bunch of them. There was I don't know all their names, but Judith Delosier. I can see the guy. He did the metaphor. David Gordon. There was like a whole crew of them, and so I feel badly that I'm leaving people out. Robert Dilts, a whole group of them. Gregory Bateson, and so that was in the 70s, and then like people in marketing grabbed onto some of the NLP tools, and it got used then for sort of sleazy sales trainings.
Yeah. Can use it for I always said you can use it for evil, and you can use it for good and evil, and that's obviously one of the, I guess, the evil ways it can be certainly used.
Yeah. What I've seen happen since is there's a lot of people who have taken stuff from NLP and rebranded it, like EMDR or brain spotting or IFS, internal family systems. These are stuff I learned 30 years ago in NLP. I had somebody come to one of my workshops recently, and she's like, how can you be doing, internal family systems and brain spotting without certification? I'm like, I was doing this for decades before there was certification. But it's become now, some of the tools have been, at least what that does is it makes them acceptable. Like you can go, insurance will sometimes cover therapists to do brain spotting. It's not as, in my experience, it's not as precise as the way we do it, but it's...
I've never even heard of brain spotting.
Yeah, well, you know that thing I sometimes do with people with the eyes?
Oh, yes.
They call it now brain spotting.
There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
No, isn't that just VAK?
Well, yeah, but it's unpacking the unconscious representations. And I don't know that they actually do that so much I don't know. I'm not an expert on it. But yeah, so it's actually a good thing because it's starting to make its way into the mainstream. But yeah, it's just good old fashioned NLP.
Yeah. And with respect to Tony Robbins as well, he worked for Grinder and Bandler, didn't he? And
that I don't know, but maybe.
I think, well, that's what I heard of. But he created his own brand of NLP, right? And has probably made it more, that sort of fast track results, fast therapy, if you like, collapsing time frame. That's what he's all about, en masse. So everyone's got their own brand of it. And what I love about you is you go really deep with people, and you give them time and space to go really deep with people. It's certainly not, I guess, at the other end of the spectrum, it's rah over here. And then Michelle Masters going like fully deep with people over here. And boiling it all down to NLP is a fast track way of helping people, and neuro meaning, what is neuro-linguistic? What's the etymology, I guess, using of language, observing language and how it links to our patterning. I want to unpack, the essence of NLP there.
Yeah, well, there's a story. I don't know if it's true, but there's a story that Richard Bandler got pulled over by the cops at some point. Not that part seems likely to me, but like he was asked what he did, and he didn't have a name for it yet. And he looked down and he had a couple of like textbooks on the floor of his car, and one was on computer programming and one was on linguistics and one was on neurology. So he kind of said, well, neurolinguistic programming.
No way.
But so the neuro part and the patterning part is that basically our beliefs and our subconscious patterns, they are neurological. They're bridged neurological pathways, which means they run automatically, like instinct. What we call instinct in animals is bridged pathways. And so as we're growing up, we make all these associations. We have these experiences. We make associations that become beliefs. And at those points, they run automatically. Like those are not conscious thoughts we're having. They are running on a 24-hour loop outside of our conscious awareness and sometimes in our conscious awareness, but whether we're aware of it or not, they're always running. And most of those patterns get laid down in the first 3 to 6 years. So like the experiences you have early on become with the associate, we have associations like, oh, that worked, or oh, that did not go well. Let's never do that again. You know, if you've ever gone to a restaurant and you've gotten food poisoning, even if it's a good restaurant, you loved it, you've been there 50 times, you have one experience like that, what happens anytime after that you think of that restaurant? Like, oh no. Imprinted. Yeah, it's imprinted. And this is what happens to kids is they imprint off their experience and those get automated. And it becomes kind of password protected. It's this different part of the brain that carries that patterning. It's not the conscious mind. And that's where a lot of people are trying to change it from the conscious mind and different part of the building. Penthouse.
And that's, unconscious biases stem from all that too, right?
Oh my God, yes. Yeah. So, you know how if you're looking at Instagram or you're on, and you look for more than 7 seconds.
Oh God, here we go. This is a whole other episode right there.
Right, okay, but
talking about the fucking crazy world of, say, Insta fame and Instagram and Insta this and Insta that. Oh my God.
Well, let's just talk algorithms for a minute. It will notice when you're there for more than 7 seconds and it will start showing you more of that. Oh, you like that? Here's another thing like that. Well, our brains do the same thing. Our brains do the exact same thing. There is a part of our brain called the reticular activating system. And so what's on the loop or the automatic loop, it will show us more of that. So it's not just what we consciously focus on, it's what's on the loop. And so in a perfect world, when we hit 18, that would open back up for business and we'd have a chance to like reassess, do I really want these filters determining my reality? But unlike your phone, your brain is not designed to update itself. It is designed to resist change, give you the finger, and run its old patterning. So being able to get in there to where the patterning's held and revise, not just change it, but change it towards what the person wants. So that instead of it working against you, it is now working on your behalf 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's a huge life changer.
How do you do that? There's the big question. How do I repattern my freaking belief systems like that, or my patterning? Oh my God. Guys, this episode's about to go on for about 5 or 6 hours. Strap in. I'm only joking. But, given the broad brushstrokes of what you do in that, let's come back let's zoom out of that. What are the biggest issues that people come to you for? What are the most common blocks?
Well, there's contexts where people generally want change. There's like money or career, there's love and relationship, health and well-being, and there's sense of worth. That's huge. But the main ways that people get stuck in any of those contexts are either old beliefs, that those old associations that are now wired up. But there are subconscious beliefs, something called unconscious family loyalties, which is the biggest hurdle I face with people, which is this is the ways that we sort of try to heal, carry, or be like our family by repeating the struggles, the pain, the tragedy of our ancestral lineage.
Oh, fuck.
Oh, my God.
We're scratching the surface of something massive here. I know how deep this rabbit hole goes,
Mm-hmm.
and not as deep as you've but I've seen you go deep with people. I've been in the room, I've experienced it and been freaked out. Yep, please play on.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's the hardest thing I come across, because honestly, if someone has a trauma when they're 2 years old, that is easier to deal with because it's held in the survival, it's held in the safety patterning. The stuff that we take on out of love and loyalty to our families, that is stabilized by love. It's not held in our neurology. It is so much easier to get people to stop doing things they do out of fear than it is to get them to stop doing things they're doing out of love. So how this works is a kid's conceived into a family and they feel the pain in the family. They don't understand it, but they feel it. Even people who are dead, they feel all that old pain. And their instinct is to want to make it better. Like there's never been a person born in the history of humanity who did not want to heal their family.
And that's just our mammalian instinct.
Yes. There's also never been a person born in the history of humanity who has pulled it off.
Damn it. Not yourself.
Yes, I know.
We're trying to fix family. All right. Yep. Keep going.
But they all try, and they try in predictable ways. And the first way they try to do it is through love. I will love them so much that they will all be healed. And because their love is so big and so pure, and because they have zero sense of proportion, this feels reasonable. Of course it will work. Why wouldn't it work? I love them so. Never works. If it actually worked, every single parent would be instantly healed upon the birth of their first child. It would be like, it's a girl. Oh, dear, I thought I was attachment avoidant. Frankly, I thought you were a narcissist borderline, but we had a baby and it's all fine. Like there'd be no therapy. There'd just be doulas everywhere. But that doesn't work. So then the kid tries to take the pain here. I will take it from you. I will have the pain so you can be okay.
Generational pain.
Yeah. Also never works because you cannot take somebody's pain from them. You can just clone it, but you don't have the right or the ability to pull it out of them. It's not like snake venom you can suck out of a wound. It's their pain and it's being stabilized in them. So then the last thing a kid does is they're like, okay, well, at least I won't have it too much better than you. If you struggled, I will struggle. If you were depressed or anxious, I will be depressed and anxious. I promise. It's not a conscious promise, but it's an intense promise.
One of the most profound things that you said to me back in the day was, I talked about that I was adopted.
Yeah.
If you remember that.
I did not, but thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. And you said, people who've been adopted, kids that have been adopted, basically go into shock. And do you want to just explain that for a second? It's just about me right now.
Well, yeah. Well, but applicable to everybody. So I'm happy to do it. I would be happy to do it just for you anyway. But because our prime directive as human beings is to belong to the people we come from and to love and be loved by them. That is so primal in us. And so when the people we belong to, those people we love unconditionally, because we don't get a choice about whether we love our parents. Later we can block it or push away, but some part of us always loves them, always wants to belong. And so when the people we come from that we love most in the world give us away, it is the supreme heartbreak. And for folks who are adopted, and I have a parent who was given up for adoption, so I had a front row seat. I still have a front row seat for all the effects of that. It is so hard for them to come out of that heartbreak, that shock, that grief. They always make it be about them, because the part of the brain that can go, you know what, my parents seem to be young and immature and unable to cope with this situation. I hope that works out for them. That part of the brain is not developed till like 7, 8, 10 years old. What's available for any kid who's given up is it's me. Like Taylor Swift says, it's me, I'm the problem, it's me. They always make it be about them. On some level, they feel unworthy, unlovable, and thrown away. And then they have to compensate for that. And so it is so, so hard. And it's never true. It's never true that they were the problem. So they live with this heartbreaking lie.
What are the most common stories that we tell ourselves? What are the most common, let's say, unconscious, patterns that most people deal with?
So there's the whole flavor of not enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not worthy, etc. And then parallel to that is unlovable, not wanted, unlovable, etc. Then there's the whole safety.
Imposter syndrome is all part of that.
Yes. And it comes down to basically, kids basically come into the world saying, here I am. I see you. Do you see me? You know how kids wave at people at a parade and they get so happy? I'm still get happy when people at a parade wave back at me. But they come in waving like, hi, here I am. And then if the response is not, so glad you're here, some part of them goes into this stunned shock and sometimes shame and guilt, but this huge contraction. So that's probably the biggest one I come across. That shows up in money, it shows up in relationship, it shows up in health. That's why almost every workshop I do, no matter what the topic, we do a piece on self-worth, because it's so primal.
So how do we combat that in simple terms?
Yeah. Well, you can't really combat it. It's because it's you'd be fighting.
I'm using my language, which is obviously
Yeah.
my default. Let's unpack that for another. No, but how do you deal with it?
To change it, you've got to get access to where the patterning is being held, which is usually very young parts of the brain. And it's very foundational in our identity. Usually it's not like there was one bad day at the beach and somebody decided they were unworthy. Usually it's been a series of, it's been the water they've been swimming in and the air they've been breathing, right, as they were younger. And not everybody has nobody has just one belief about anything. We all have multiple, in fact, contradictory beliefs. So a kid can grow up and have some really good experiences, and some part of them thinks, okay, I'm good, life is good. And then they can have these god-awful experiences, and their brain will go, oh, I'm not good. And it will hold them both as true.
Yeah, it's that old adage that someone can have gone through, a kid could have gone through all manner of abuse and some heavy stuff growing up and come out okay. But another person can just be looked at funny and be fucked up for life.
Sometimes the things that we say they can be okay means that they are compensating well. But yes.
Overcompensating, yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes that has a lot to do with that family loyalty piece.
Okay.
Like if the parents are not okay, sometimes the kid's system is just looking for any kind of excuse to, and I don't mean that as like in a bad way, in a judgmental way. They're looking for some way to take that on.
Yeah,
and so
yes.
Any evidence they can get, like, okay, yeah, then I'm no good either.
Overcompensate and be the pillar of the community or pillar of the family and the strong one.
And here's the thing: when they compensate like that, what they're doing is they have then the belief about themselves that they have the opposite belief about themselves, but that gets repressed into the subconscious, and they live in the I'll be the strong one. And then what they do is the stuff that's repressed in the subconscious, they recruit other people to come into their world who embody the thing about themselves that they have repressed. So like they will pick out partners or friends or work situations that will reflect back to them those repressed or those denied.
Sounds like the breeding ground of narcissism to a certain extent.
Well, narcissism is a compensation for incredible lack of worth. It is not a sense of too much self-confidence. It is it's real worthlessness that's projected inside out.
So the biggest blocks, self-worth. Yeah, I don't know where we're going. We'll get there. Hopefully this is great, guys. This is the thing with Michelle. You just go down these fucking rabbit holes, and I forgot we were actually recording. So this is beautiful.
Yeah.
This is exactly how it's meant to be, and I knew we'd go here. And when you're working with someone, when you're a coach and you're working with someone, trying to discover where it all comes from, their patterning, their belief systems, their identity. How are you doing that? Through a series of open-ended questions? Why? How did we get here? Or take me through some of the tools of timeline therapy, even, and family systems, and what you've done there, and also hypnosis to a certain extent, because that's all part of NLP as well.
Yeah, I don't put people in full-on trances, although they will sometimes trance out during a session, and if they do that, I will make good use of it. But we use a lot of hypnotic language patterning, so as a way to speak directly to the subconscious, because that's where the patterning is. Gosh, there are so many tools, and at this point, I'm rarely paying attention to the tools I'm using. But when somebody tells me either what's going on for them or what they want, either way, they give me so much information. There's the verbal content, there's the physiology, there's their pupil dilation, there's their skin color, there's their breathing, there's the you ever seen a carpenter when they're looking for a stud, they'll kind of like knock on a wood, on a sheetrock until they can, oh, there's something under there. So the whole interaction for me is basically I'm noticing, oh, look, there's something under there that's supporting this whole thing that is stuck for them.
And so through a series of questions, you'll find where that stud is, so to speak, and that will show up in all the verbal cues, eye movements, the words that we use, the breathing, and the worst thing about being around Michelle is you just become overly. Maybe it's my stuff. Maybe it's my stuff. Yeah, it's my stuff, Trav. Own it. Is you become so freaking conscious of your unconscious in a way that you've never done before. It's like, I want to stare straight down the barrel and not give too much away, because what is my face? Damn it, my face and my breathing and my language is telling her that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah.
Now I'm mocking it, but it's so true.
Oh, it's so true.
Yeah.
I do the same thing when I go to somebody else for NLP.
What was that again?
I do the same thing when I go to somebody else for NLP, because you can't work on yourself. You can't be conscious.
So talk to me about that. You've got coaches, right?
Yeah. Well, it's hard because almost everybody that I know I've taught, but there's one or two people.
You would be a freaking nightmare to coach. Oh my God. Who is the guru that bloody does that to you? Oh my God.
Well, I can't do it to myself because we're blind to our own blind spots, right?
We can't be, because we're so subjective. We need that objectivity. I was just on a call last night, and and there was a group of business coaching students for this business coach that I know. And I said, there's two things that a coach, if you want to get to the next level, get a coach. Simple, right? Same as an athlete, same as our CEOs of today. They've all got a band of coaches, a team of coaches for different things around them. I think everyone's got a mindset coach, whatever that is. And there's two things that a coach brings to a situation, and that is objectivity, the ability to get in that helicopter and have that helicopter's perspective. You can't see the forest from the trees. And your job is to show them the forest and hold that vision for them. And also accountability, good old-fashioned ass kicking, and keeping people accountable on a week-to-week basis. Maybe that's right or wrong, but that's what I said. And the objectivity thing that's why I've always invested in coaches and believed in if I want to get through something or go to the next level, always get a coach to collapse that time frame for me, because at the end of the day, I can't see what I'm in.
Yeah. Well, I understand the thing about accountability. It's something I never do, because if somebody is not doing what they want and they really want to do it, it's because there's something still in the way.
True. They're not inspired enough. Or
they're not. Well, something is running interference. And so for me, if they keep not doing it, I'm like, okay, what is that? I get super curious. Like, what is it that is running that's so deep that this person is not letting themselves have something they really, really want? Because it's rarely that someone is lazy or broken or stupid. It's usually that they still got something running. And so their conscious efforts, the willpower they're using, you can only use that for so long. The unconscious patterns, sabotage patterns, run 24 hours a day. They will just wait you out. They will just wait till you get tired, turn your attention to something else, and they'll reassert themselves. So a lot of, and I don't know that this is the way you use it, but a lot of what some people use accountability for is to try and kind of force somebody to override their own patterning. And that rarely lasts for very long.
Yeah, and as a coach, if you've got to use too much external motivation to keep someone accountable, then you're losing the battle.
It's hard on both of you. Yeah.
They should be internally inspired to go after their own stuff. If they had nothing in their way, there was no blockages, and they were freer, then they wouldn't need someone kicking their butt, keeping them accountable. Maybe the only reason they'd have a coach in that respect is because they've got a really, really strong why, and they need the co-creator of that vision, or that the holder of that vision in front of them to keep pulling them up. Talk to me about the relationship between NLP and positive psychology. Do you do much of positive, have you intertwined positive psychology, know much about that in relation to NLP at all?
I don't know what it is.
Positive psychology?
I can imagine, but I haven't actually heard that term.
Okay, so positive psychology, kind of like I guess the science of the psychology of happiness.
Right.
And we can go on and on about, happiness being a fleeting emotion versus, say, fulfillment. So all the happiness crowd out there, the happiness coaches, I dare say, I've got a bit of an issue with. We'll park that for a second, Trav. And you can be going through depression and find $20 in your old jeans, and you're like, I'm happy. Or you can just eat chocolate or have a drink, and I'm happy. Taking someone's strengths or identifying someone's strengths, what gives them meaning, purpose, fulfillment, and basically bleeding and leaning into that and bleeding more of that into a person's life, in their work and into their life, to have a more fulfilled life is, and I'm probably butchering it, is positive psychology, not so much cleaning up, quotes, cleaning up the past and fixing weaknesses. And I guess traditional therapy is about going back into a person's past, and tell me if I'm wrong and please challenge it. Going back into a person's past, uncovering childhood and what's happened there, and using therapy or drugs to help a person be normal. And again, air quotes, be normal again, so they're a normal functioning member of society. Whereas positive psychology says, all right, that's great. And that helps obviously with the acute stuff. But if someone wants to perform, it's sort of like performance psychology, helping someone lean into their strengths, not just fix weaknesses, but just do more of what they're good at and what they love. And Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi flow is about bleeding more of that into a person's life. Tell me if I'm wrong. Challenge it. But I've always wondered, what's the relationship around, the positive psychology and why people come to you as a client, positive psychology and NLP, and maybe the two cross over. But if you've never heard of it before, then...
Well, I can tell you this. One of the things that...
Seligman was the grandfather of positive psychology.
Who?
Martin Seligman.
Okay. I can tell you that Bert Hellinger, who's the one who really put family constellations, family systems work on the map, he's who I learned it from. He studied NLP, and one of the things that the thing that he most took from it into his constellation work was the NLP's focus on finding resources. So we're actually, when I'm working with someone, I'm doing both. I'm looking at, okay, what is it that's taking this person offline? Because that doesn't have to be there. And then where are they most drawn? Where are they most happy? Where do they have strengths and things? And because what we can do is we can start to when we revise the old beliefs, the old patterning, then we can connect the younger parts of them up with the really strong resourced parts of them. And then these parts of the brain are then working together instead of fighting each other.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Your work in family systems, family constellations, explain what that craziness that I was a part of, explain what that is, because I will not be able to do it very well.
Well, in its traditional form, when you do a constellation, you typically have a group of people. So, for instance, I had a guy recently who wanted a constellation. He has an aggressive brain tumor, and they were hoping for some help. But, you can never guarantee anything. I have had people who've had like cancer diagnoses that after a constellation were changed, like the diagnosis was changed.
Really?
Yeah, it has happened, but it's you never guarantee that.
Yeah, no.
You never know, right?
You're putting that on your marketing.
No, I would not put that on the marketing. Right? We've had people who've had remarkable shifts, but you just never know. But so this guy his wife was there, and aggressive brain tumor, and they wanted to see if there was anything we could do. And so I had a group of volunteers. Now, this was actually on Zoom, because when the pandemic shut everything, the one thing I thought would never work on Zoom was Constellations. And then the pandemic came and we had no choice. And turns out, well, you can actually do them on Zoom, and they work quite well.
Wow.
So he was in Europe. And so I have a group of people that I invite onto Zoom. Usually, traditionally, this would have been done in a room, and we'd sit in a circle.
Which is what I was a part of a couple of times. Yeah.
Somebody says, I've got this issue, and then I would take them through an interview on their family history. And then we would ask people to volunteer to represent members of that person's family. Now, when Bert Hellinger used to do it, he would say, pick someone to be your mother, pick someone to be your father. I found it seemed like sometimes the people who got picked, when they knew who they were, it got in their heads a little bit. So
it's kind of like a theatre experience.
Mm-hmm. It's
and everyone's playing a different role.
Yeah, except it's not acting.
No.
Nobody's acting. Because somehow when people agree to represent this member of the family, in this part, we do not know how this happens, but it happens every time. When someone agrees to represent this person, the experience of that original person comes through the representative. Like, they don't have to be sensitive. They don't have to be psychic. I can't tell you, like, I don't know if you know who Les Stroud is, the Survivor Man. He had a series, Survivor Man. He had a couple of different realities, a documentary and filmmaker. He had this series, they would drop him off in places with nothing to see if he could survive. Anyway, he came to one I did in January. And before he realized it, he volunteered to represent in this constellation. And then as soon as he did it, he thought, oh, this isn't going to go well. I can't be hypnotized. I'm going to blow the whole thing up. But he got the role of the father of the client. And within seconds of him getting that role, his jaw started to quiver. He started to get all emotional. Like, it really kind of weirded him out. He had to talk to me for like an hour afterwards. He's like, what the hell was that? And I said, I don't know, but it comes through. Somehow it comes through. And it lets us see in 3-dimensional, for everybody there to see, some of the unconscious family dynamics that are flowing through the family system into the client today. It's
like I said before, and I jokingly say this probably for my own protection. I'll get rid of the word probably. It's the trippiest thing I've ever seen. And it's like everyone in that room who's playing the role, and even the crowd, channel something.
Yes.
From somewhere.
Yes.
And with no precursor, no setup, no script.
Yep. No drugs.
No drugs. Yeah, and you're from, you're close to San Francisco, a Burning Man too. So, that says a lot. And channeling is probably the best way to put it, right?
Yeah, and it's not, they're not even aware they're doing it, because no. And you could be like a trucker from Canberra and still this stuff would come through.
Let's unpack the fact that you said a trucker from Canberra.
Well, I normally say Modesto, but I doubt anybody in your office knows but in your audience knows where Modesto is in California.
How does it go? Like, you're asking questions of the client and so it's a 3D experience.
Right. So let me go back to the guy I was telling you about. So he's in Europe. He's got this aggressive brain tumor. And so, he's not that old. So basically he's trying to get himself dead early. So for me, the question is, how come? How come this guy's trying to take himself out so early? Like, who in the family died early, died tragically, or, killed people, or it's going to be because he's trying to die. This isn't very creative. Because he's trying to die, it's got to be about death. Like, that's how it works in constellations. Oof. It's not like, somebody made money in a shady way, so he's trying to die. It's sort of a direct correlation. He's trying to die, so who died?
Even though he hasn't chosen it for himself.
Correct. Not consciously. Right. And so I start doing the family history, and it turns out he is Austrian. I didn't know that. He was born in Austria. And I said, your parents and grandparents all born in Austria. I said, what year were your parents born? They were born in the late 40s or 50s. So I said, so your grandparents, I said, did either of your grandfathers serve in the war? Because they would have been young men in their 20s in the 30s and 40s. And he said, not that I know of. I said, were they ill? Were they sick? Were they injured? He said, no. I said, there is almost zero chance that they were able-bodied men in Austria who were not, because they were taking 80-year-old men and 15-year-old boys, they were so desperate for men. And so, and he had said that his mother's father had committed suicide, and after that, his mother's mother committed suicide. So both his grandparents on his mother's side committed suicide.
Oh.
So when we set it up, everything pointed to the war. Everything pointed to the war.
Yeah,
and the thing is, those folks did not talk about it. Like, they just didn't talk about it. Because first off, how can you even begin to communicate that?
So there's shame, there's guilt.
Oh, there's shame, there's guilt, there's horror, there was just, no winners. There was you don't win a war like that. You merely survive it.
Mm.
And so that generation the Germans are still dealing with a lot of the unconscious guilt from that. And so it all pointed to that. Like, I didn't tell the people who were representing did not know his ancestry. They didn't know any of the history. But like, one of them the one who was representing his grandfather started shaking immediately. As soon as they got the roll, shaking, like in terror and shame. And the one with the grandmother, I forget what was similar. And again, knew nothing of the history, didn't know what country he was even from. So we did this constellation and things seemed to move. All fingers crossed, I don't know. But a week later, his wife contacted me and said, well, we did a little research and it turns out, yes, both of his grandfathers did serve. The father's father, which that side was not as intense. He was stationed in occupied France and then occupied Greece. So although it wasn't great what was going on in occupied countries, it wasn't as bad as the mother's side, where the grandfather who hung himself had been at Stalingrad. There was no worse thing in the war than Stalingrad. The Germans lost more people in that one battle against the Russians than they did against all the other allies combined for the entire war. There was starvation. People were eating each other. It was just horrific. And so he was a survivor of that. And
this has been buried. That stuff's been buried under the surface. We don't talk about the war.
Nope.
And yet it pops up in role play, for want of a better description.
Yeah. And that kind of horror is something that literally we cannot wrap our heads around. And so this guy had given himself, like, he was trying to exit early and he was doing it in his head, trying to literally wrap his brain around it. And
so how do you then, and I've seen you do it masterfully, how do you, family constellations, so it's about stopping that guilt or, having that not play out in that person's time, their experience of life, like right now, like, no, don't take it on. I love how you stop it at the grandpa, you stop it at I'm butchering that, of course.
The very first thing is acknowledging it. It's naming the thing that has been hidden and repressed.
Labeling. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So it's acknowledging, it's through representatives, because these people are long dead, right? But having the representatives say, yes, I was in the Battle of Stalingrad. Millions of people died. People starved. People were eating each other. It was horror upon horror. Like, it's not a judgmental thing. It's just a mere statement of fact.
And you're not presupposing this. You're not implanting thoughts that people then go, yeah, I'll peg my grief, my trauma onto that because Michelle sort of implicated that, talking. No, you're an open book.
No, I'm just working with what's showing up in the representatives. And like I said, when we were doing it, we did not have confirmation yet that they'd actually served in the war, but everything, looked like a war, looked like the war. So it's acknowledging. And in those cases where you don't yet know for sure that somebody, you have to tread carefully with paying attention to what the representatives are giving you, but without getting too attached to a story. but we did get confirmation later. And sometimes I know going in, I know some of the history, but often there'll be this big dark thing in the history that everybody knows about, and it'll actually be about something else that what nobody knew about. So it's phenomenal work. It's fascinating. And it is, as you say, it can be quite trippy.
Yeah. And, I sound really adolescent when I say that, but it is phenomenal to be in the room when that actually happens. So, and I know that you run these constellations in your practice, and, I definitely encourage anyone and everyone. I mean, we're all running to ayahuasca these days, and we're all running to these plant medicine. Dude, cool. Go do a family constellation with Michelle.
Yeah,
and
wherever I can, I try to include those in my workshops because it can move so much.
So your attitude around plant medicines?
I've never done it
No.
myself. No, I've never done plant medicine. But I have clients who do. I have clients who even lead ceremonies, and I've seen it do some real wonders for people. And sometimes the combination of the two is a nice combination. Like people who've already done the plant medicine, there's an opening. There's something they can draw on as a resource for letting it go.
You'd say that there's not a one size fits all, right? And I guess that's part of the problem with personal development coaching is we buy into one way of doing things. We buy into that guru, whereas there's many different ways, many different tools where we can access different parts of ourselves in order to go to the next level. And I've always had a problem with someone, you must go to this seminar, you must go to this event, this retreat, whatever it is, because this guy, this girl, whoever, this leader has all the answers. Well, they have some answers, but let's not just buy into one stream of thinking here. And that's what you're like water, and there's lots of different ways in which this can go.
Yeah, I'm
And
not trying to teach anybody to be like me. Lord knows that spot's taken. We don't need more of me. Yeah.
That's it.
We need more of people getting to be who they actually are. We need every person who's here. They wouldn't be here. Every one of you wouldn't be here if there wasn't a spot for you.
Ooh, boom.
If the universe didn't want you here, you wouldn't be here. So there's a place for every one of us with our name on it. And so for me, my work is to find out like what do you want? What lights you up? And then see what's in the way, if there's something in the way, and see what we can do to get that out of the way so that you can actually be here and have a fantastic time at it.
Yeah, beautiful. Hey, tell me about the documentary that you're a part of.
Oh yeah, it's called The Year of Transformation. They approached me last fall. Originally, it was just 12 of what they said were the top coaches in the world. And after they started to see the footage, they got so excited. They thought, you know what, let's make it like a year of transformation. So I think they now have 52 experts, and some of them are health and, stuff. But I'm one of the original 12 coaches. So they came out and they filmed me last fall. We did some pickup shooting. But it's going to be like one a week for a year with I should know these people's names. But there's some very big names in there. The breathology guy. There's a bunch of very famous people in there. Yeah, and so it's probably going to air sometime. It's going to start dripping out sometime this summer on this guy's platform. The producer has a platform, and he promotes through affiliates like Tony Robbins. He's got a couple million people on his list, plus all his affiliates. So they said my episode will probably be in the second month. They said it was one of the stronger ones. That was nice to hear.
Well, you are, you hate the word guru, but, it's you've certainly been that for a lot of people, including myself. Talk to me about your magic workshops you got going on, and you've called it magic, and it sounds kind of woo-woo, but it's not.
Well, the first workshop I created was one, they wanted me to create a 2-day workshop on money, and I didn't know what to call it. The owner of the company, Carl, at the time said, well, why don't you call it money magic? And it seemed a little cheesy to me at the time, but I'm like, fine, whatever. Naming a workshop's the worst part of workshops, I got to tell you. But anyway, the more I did it, the more I realized it is kind of accurate, because when you shift the stuff that's in the way, people would always say to me, like, just out of the blue, all of a sudden I'm making more money. I'm not even working harder. I'm working less and I'm making more money. Or out of the blue, this happened. Out of the blue, this happened. I didn't even realize till tax time this, that we doubled our income. So it does have this feeling of magic. When you clear up what's in the way, stuff just starts showing up, whether it's relationship or whether, it's money or stuff, with your health. There are so many things that we don't realize when we shift those beliefs or the family loyalties or whatever the sabotage is, then it's like this good stuff has just been waiting for us and it starts showing up without us even trying.
It's the same thing too. Like like money is the result of going there. Love, relationship is the result of going, like underpinning the foundational commonality, the common denominator is the stuff that you deal with. So once you deal with that unconscious repatterning, then the result will be probably in money, probably in relationship, probably in health. Like a lot of stuff gets uncovered, unpacked as a result.
Although a change in one of them often results in changes in the others as well, just because they have the same root. But, if you're in the international...
Better way of explaining it than the way I was explaining
it. I don't know that that's true, but it's good to have more than one explanation for different folks. But if you're in the International Space Station and you're on one side of it and you want to go to the other side, how much effort does it take? If you're in the International Space Station?
Not much.
There's zero gravity. You can basically do this to one wall and you're heading towards another wall.
Another metaphor, kids. That's another metaphor, just FYI. I'm just, she's full of them, I'll tell you.
Because there's no resistance, right?
No.
And so we don't realize how much resistance we are working against all the time until it's not there.
And you can muscle through it. You can kid yourself and muscle through, but that gets you nowhere other than just tired.
Yeah. And I meet a lot of people who are burnt out from, trying to force themselves to do what everybody says and be what everybody. Some people's morning routine is like, my God, like 2 hours of, they gotta meditate and they gotta run and they gotta do this and they gotta do that.
Don't forget the cold plunge.
Okay, well there you go. See, and I admire those people. I am not one of them. Like, I just don't have it in me anymore. But what I will do is, if I notice at this point, because I've done so much work, if I want something, it almost always shows up without me trying. And so if something isn't showing up, I'm like, okay, there's something there, and I'll go work with somebody on that, and then stuff starts to move again.
Hey, talk to me real briefly before because we're going to do a round two, guys. So we're just scratching the surface here. Talk to me about trusting intuition.
Yeah, intuition is phenomenal. And the one thing you have to be careful for is sometimes our fear can mimic intuition really well.
Ooh.
So fears can sometimes oppose as intuition. So when somebody says, I have a feeling this may not go well, that could be intuition or it could be old patterning. So one of the things to notice is usually if you're feeling really calm and connected and you get an intuition and it's kind of quiet, but it feels nice, that's probably, either some part of you speaking to you, or if you believe in guides or the source or whatever, those are the moments when we're most receptive to that kind of guidance, is when we're feeling kind of calm and okay. When we're frightened, when we're in fight, flight, sympathetic arousal, fight, flight, it's much harder for that stuff to get through. So I use, at this point, I'll pick who if I'm going to hire, I was just talking to a publisher yesterday and there was a couple of different publishers that somebody was offering to introduce me to. And it's like, okay, that one's not the right feeling. This one feels really good.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Are you religious?
Here's the thing about me and religion. Is, how if there's a song you love and you really love that song, like really love that song, and then you hear it being played by a middle school band on their first week of school with out of tune instruments, it's like, the song is in there, but it's like, for me, a lot of religion, like I know the song is in there, in almost any religion. I know the song is in there, but sometimes it's coming through and really for what feels like to me distorted. So I'm not against religion at all, but for me, I do feel a connection to the all that is. I love that. One of the great joys of the last few years for me, Travis, has been as I'm teaching, or Trav, sorry, I don't mean to make it too formal, but when I'm teaching a group, there are often these moments when I get glimpses of the people I'm working with, the way that I think Source sees them, or Spirit, or God, whatever you want to call that. Like I see them for a minute through those eyes. This one guy, this was a group of professional speakers, so it was a private workshop. It was just for them. And so I had to get to know them, because normally people who come to my workshops know me, but I'd been hired to come in specifically to work with this group.
Wow.
And so I was saying, what do you want to come out of this? And this one lovely young man raised his hand and he said, I just want to be the best version of me. And it happened right there. I saw him the way I got a glimpse of like him. And I teared up. I got really emotional. And I said, buddy, box ticked. Already there. Now what would you like? And it was just so emotional. I still get it. Because we walk around thinking we've got to be better. We've got to be smarter, this, that. We've got to fix ourselves. We've got to keep pushing. And it's like we are already so incredibly beautiful, so incredibly loved.
Mm.
And I would love for people to be able to create their lives, but from that place, that you're already so loved. You're already so magnificent.
You're already whole.
You're already whole. You're already magic. You're already divine. What would you like?
Oh, God, that's nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for making me cry. All right. So on the next episode with Michelle Masters, we're going to go deeper into religion, spirituality. We're going to even go geopolitical, Trump versus Biden. Look, whatever. So, damn you. But thank you. Yeah, now I'm thinking about how, look, anyway, we'll do a round 2, Michelle.
Anytime, Trav.
Look, amazing. People love you for this, very reason, and why you're phenomenal at it. For the people watching and listening, you get the power of Michelle now, don't you? All right. You need to connect with her. And if you've got to this point in this podcast right now, whether it be on YouTube, whether it be Apple, Spotify, whatever, and you've got this far, I know a lot of people don't finish things that they start. If you've got to this point, and if Michelle has said something during this chat that has resonated with you, I need you to connect with Michelle ASAP. She's good. End of story. How can people do that? How can people connect with you, Michelle?
Probably through my website. You can get there either through michellemastersnlp.com, or soon it will be wiredformagic.com. But
boom. There you go, guys. So thank you so much, Michelle. Thanks for being on the Bucket List Life podcast. And once again, thank you for spreading the love and empowering people. Phenomenal.
Thanks so much for listening to the Bucket List Life podcast with the world's #1 bucket list expert, Trav Bell. For more great content, go to www.thebucketlistguy.com. We'll see you next time.